Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast today, actually, a couple different topics, changing the format a little bit. Just had a very eventful season finale to The Night Manager last night. So I've already recorded a conversation with Sona where we discussed the finale of that season and what it might set up for the next season of that show. As I called it in my conversation with Sona, it's the Empire Strikes Back of The Night Manager for anybody who has been watching that. Darren, you're not watching Night Manager. Have you watched any of this?
No, I think I watched the first episode of the second season just to see what the fuss was all about and how they were going to bring characters back from 2 decades before.
Right.
And it showed the whole first season in a good little kind of vignette. And the first season looked amazing. So I was disappointed that I didn't catch up with that. But no, I'm not continuing with that. I think I'm too far behind.
Yeah, I recommend definitely watch the first season of that before watching the second. And for anybody who remembered that series or would like to catch up on it, but doesn't have AMC Plus, which is the way to watch that first season, it is Amazon Prime, which has the second season and the third season, which is already in production, that they also have purchased season 1. So that's all available to stream there if you're curious to check it out. Only 6 episodes. These British seasons are very short. So I do highly recommend it. And Darren, to your point, and Sona and I discussed this in the very conversation, the finale of season 2 was very eventful, very interesting. The season overall, uneven, but nowhere near as solid as season 1. But anybody who's curious to sample this at all, do start with season 1. Season 1 of that show is excellent, truly excellent.
Yeah, it really came across in the highlights of it. It looked really good.
Yeah, it's like the kind of adult, sexy spy show that you want with a lot of intrigue, a lot of twists. You can never trust anybody. Really the kind of thing you turn to a spy show or story for. Based on the actual John le Carré. The season 2 is not based on a le Carré. It's basically an extrapolation of those characters. The season 1 is based on that book, one of his better books. So, of course, has a solid plot.
Is he still around? Is he still writing novels?
No, I think he'd be like 100 years old.
Okay, all right.
But,
I do remember seeing The Constant Gardener in the cinema with, I think it was Liam Neeson in it, and it was so spellbinding.
How could you forget?
It was Ray Fiennes, that's it. Okay.
And Rachel Weisz.
Love her. Yeah, it was a great film many years ago now. But yeah, Le Carré, his properties pop up every now and again, and it's always interesting to see if it's a good or bad adaptation.
There's so many of his books that have been adapted over decades now. And with this real interest in spy series, again, I'm sure there'll be even more of it. As you've already heard, everybody, Darren, of course, joining me today with another part of our conversation, discussing this 4th episode of Industry and maybe some other things we've been watching along the way that we wanted to recommend. And of course, Darren, because you missed last week, can't wait to hear your feedback about Industry episode 3 as well.
Yes, well, yeah, I've been on holiday a little bit. It's been Australia Day here, which is like your 4th of July, but possibly a little bit less patriotic. But yeah, we avoided the crowds and the fireworks and went and explored some empty beaches down south and yeah, had some oysters and listened to Enya.
What was I just watching where they used Enya on the soundtrack? Ironically, I can't remember now, but something very recently used Enya on the soundtrack.
It was Industry.
Oh, it was Industry, wasn't it? Yes.
I think Harper was like this.
Before we get into Industry episode 4 here, anything else you've been watching along the way? I know one thing that I think you have sampled at least partially, if not fully, and I have seen all of it, is Wonder Man, which I just last week, having not seen Wonder Man, of course, I was pitching that I love the fact that we were getting a new Game of Thrones series, and I have not seen episode 3, but loved the first 2 episodes of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This buddy, low stakes buddy comedy, basically set in this world of Game of Thrones, where you see little shards of the bigger story, certainly a much lower budget than the House of the Dragon series, of course, with dragons and incredible special effect budgets and giant sets, very low stakes, but exactly what I reset for these massive worlds that seem to have these incredible stakes every single time out. And anyway, I was very complimentary about that Game of Thrones series. And then by chance, the very same week that I made that recommendation, Wonder Man comes out, and as a binge, And I don't think I had already pitched just after seeing the premiere how strong I thought that was in another conversation earlier this week. But I thought that the show isn't as great as that first pilot episode, which I absolutely loved, but I still really enjoyed this another buddy comedy that I found so touching, and also a satire of Hollywood, like we saw a couple of times this past year with the franchise and also with the studio. Of course. Anyway, very much like this. It wasn't a home run by the end of it, but at moments, it is the best thing I think that Marvel's done for TV. What did you think of it?
I've got one episode to go in Wonder Man. Did not hear about this property, have not heard of the original character, didn't hear about it until it was on television last week. And it is delightful. I'm loving watching it. It's such a binge. All the episodes are there. They're about half an hour long.
Very short.
So adorable. Ben Kingsley
Yes.
is just
Incredible.
smashing it out of the park. He plays a very almost an unlikable character, and we've seen his character in the Iron Man films and also in Shang-Chi, which he did it a lot with a little bit, but this, he's given a huge canvas to do whatever he wants. He's so charming and so endearing as a little bit of a Weasley character based on the Dustin Hoffman character from Midnight Cowboy,
Exactly.
which they watch in the film. And who's the main guy? Yahya Abdul Mateen II is also incredibly endearing as almost a bit of a character. He's supposed to be a little bit unlikable, a little bit interior. He doesn't have any friends, but I'd be his friend. No worries. He's a little bit too intense when he's breaking a script down. He's got a bit part on American Horror Story, but he gets in trouble because he's trying to get into the nuts and bolts of this character when he really only has a couple of lines and then he's supposed to get killed. Hilarious opening episode. I think it's pretty solid all the way through. I've got one more to go, which I'll watch today. And yeah, stoked to see how it finishes up. There's also a bottle episode about episode 3 or 4.
Poor man.
with it's like a full black and white episode based on another guy with supposed superpowers, and it's hilarious. So fun, amazing. And I don't know who that actor was, but he was incredible.
Yeah, I haven't seen him before. I actually looked him up after the fact, and apparently he's actually a stand-up comedian, but he's got a lot of acting work in the past year or two. So I guess people like working with him. But yeah, very entertaining. Yeah, in this standalone episode, I actually thought I had missed something in the universe of Marvel, that the Wonder Man, well, he's not actually Wonder Man. This is very meta, by the way. So the overall story is that, I forget the character's name now, Yahya Abdul-Mateen. Simon Williams, right? That he watched this show Wonder Man, which is basically the comic book, this movie, with his dad. His dad is no longer in the picture, but he had this very warm relationship when he was younger, and he's lost his way. And that's one of the things I think is so powerful in this show, by the way, Darren, is that, like you said, they meet each other at one point watching a Revival House, watching Midnight Cowboy. And there is very much that relationship between this guy trying to make it in the city and maybe not savvy enough to be able to not be a gigolo, but just be an actor. And then this guy who's the Ratso Rizzo character, the Dustin Hoffman character in that film, who has his own ulterior motives, maybe not that trustworthy, played by the Ben Kingsley character. But then, of course, they have this very sweet and very emotional connection. These two characters that are, one very naive in his expectation of having made a friend, the other one much more calculating, but finding a friend in the strangest of circumstances. And yeah, it's very sweet. And I was actually pitching this to my sister and telling her, you could have watched this show without having any previous exposure to Marvel at all. Although, of course, it is more entertaining if you have this relationship with the Ben Kingsley character from, his previous appearances. But he is incredible in this performance. And as you mentioned, the Simon character is so interesting, where you see him being very interior and awkward. But when he has to give a performance, that there's always this very intense and sadness to his character. And it's really just fantastic. I love that scene, which I think you've already seen, unless it's in the final episode, but I'm pretty sure you saw it already, where they are just doing dialogue back and forth to each other in the living room. And I'm like, I could watch this for an hour. I just loved it so much. It's just, yeah, it's so much fun. And all of it because the plot's really not that consequential. It's really more about this friendship that forms between the two of them. And it's really fantastic. And I doubt we may see this character again. I doubt we'd see a second season of this show, but it doesn't matter. It could just be a one and done. This is what they call Marvel Showcase. It's like a new off label Marvel, which is supposed to be these types of stories. I think I am on board for this more than I am for the next Avengers film, to be honest.
I'm all about this. I love it. You don't need to know anything about Marvel. It's hardly about Marvel at all. He's hiding something inside him. It could be any kind of disability that he's hiding that he doesn't want people to see. He'll lose his job if anybody identifies that he's got this disability. So it's quite relatable in a number of ways. I just love the idea that he's an actor that auditions really well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But when he gets on set, he doesn't quite know how to handle himself. It's all a bit much. And he just dives too far deep into it. He can't just relax and play the character, which is what Ben Kingsley's character can do. He's lived his life as an actor and he's very comfortable doing it, even though he's battling these past demons of also being the face of the Mandarin terrorist organization. It's hilarious. I love it so much. And I wish there was more episodes. Yeah, all for this type of Marvel series for sure.
And there's a couple of things that I think are interesting there because of this trauma he had in his childhood, which we are not even fully clear about all the details of it, that he has made him part of the way he is, very isolated and of course hiding this to maintain his livelihood. So all of that is pretty powerful stuff. But the advice that Kingsley gives him to simply let the dialogue guide you through the character. Don't overthink it. Don't think about it too much. Just read the words. Just be present. In a way, is like life. It's life coaching for him as well, beyond just the acting coaching. And speaking of Dustin Hoffman, you probably know this story, but I love the idea that when he was making Marathon Man, he during the torture scenes with Sir Laurence Olivier, very much the British school of acting versus method acting here in the US, that he was not sleeping. He was, intentionally, trying to do the method thing to put himself into as much discomfort as possible. And Olivier is asking him why he looked the way he did, what was happening. And he explained that, I haven't slept in days for preparing for this. And Olivier says to him, have you ever tried just acting? And to a large extent, that is what we see here represented to some extent here as well.
I have heard that story before. That's a classic, isn't it?
It really is. So I love to tell that story.
One way is a lot easier than the other.
Right. Like a lot less detrimental to your health as well. So finish it off. It's terrific. A great final episode too. And weirdly sweet, just like such a sweet story. I loved it.
And these meta shows can sometimes be a bit annoying, but I didn't find this annoying at all. There's Joe Pantoliano playing himself. There's Josh Gad also playing himself. I don't really know who that guy is apart from the snowman from Frozen. And he does a great job parodying himself. It's hilarious.
I love that he's like DJing and doing raps about Olaf, because of course that's how everybody knows him anyway. Yeah, it's not quite the amazing satire that the studio was, obviously, but still, even that stuff is pretty entertaining. And but still primarily just this another buddy show with very low stakes. And and low barrier of entry is very low here, but fantastic. Even if you just tangentially familiar with the Marvel universe, I would recommend people check it out.
Yeah, and the creator is Destin Daniel Cretton, who also did Shang-Chi.
Made Shang-Chi, exactly.
And I'm just looking, he looks like he's doing the new Spider-Man too.
Yes, he's made the new Spider-Man. And I mean, what a career trajectory for him. He started doing Short Term 12, this very low budget.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Terrific film. And he's gone from there to being one of the hive mind that's now orchestrating the whole Marvel universe.
Epic. Good on him. He's doing the interesting stuff.
Yeah, if he brings more of this kind of personal touch to the Avengers film, we less planets crashing into other planets and more of this, please. Anything else you watched while you were on your break?
Look, Victor, it's been the Australian Open tennis the
Mhm.
last 2 weeks. So that's just finished up. That's a sport that my wife is into, so that we can watch together. So it's been really good looking at the backstories of all these Eastern European tennis players. And it's in a good time zone for us. And the finals were really great. So, yeah, we've been a little bit obsessed with tennis over the last couple of weeks. What else did I see? We just finished off Twinless
Oh
last
yeah.
night.
Mhm.
So, yeah, not a bad little indie film. Nothing hugely amazing, but a very interesting plot and very interesting actors in it as well. That guy that's the lead in it, he's also in the Send Help, the Sam
Send help.
Raimi
Yeah.
film at the moment. He played an amazing character. So yeah, that was quite interesting to watch. Very different.
Yeah, I actually like that film a lot. I put it in my top 10 for the year, mostly because I would completely caught me off guard. I had no idea what I was in for when I watched that show and that film, I should say. And yeah, I like the twist. I like when a film changes what it is. You know, you pretty much know what you're going to get maybe 20 minutes into that film, and you're like, oh, this is not the movie I thought I was going to watch at all. And I did like that aspect of it for sure.
And just exploring, I've got cousins that are identical twins. Just
Hmm.
exploring that kind of thing that identical twins are, they're each other's best friend. And yeah, it could be an absolute tragedy when one dies. I think there's also a couple of twins surfing guys in the eastern states. One of the guys just got killed by a shark last year. And so I'm following his twin, and he's posting a lot of updates on the situation and how that's affected the community. And yeah, it's really interesting and quite heartbreaking to lose
Yeah.
a twin for sure.
I think it's, obviously losing anyone in your family tragic, but I can't imagine considering how close twins are. So yeah, all that was fascinating to me in that film as well. And I did see, by the way, I saw the Sam Raimi film, and Sam Raimi is having such a great time. For me, the movie was it's a 5-star, 3-star movie. The absolute perfection at being a very modest ambitions, let's say. But
It looks so fun.
Rachel McAdams is absolutely incredible in that film and having so
Awesome.
much fun. It is, yeah, a blast. And Raimi having so much fun too. By the way, I did not see this in 3D. Apparently, it was available in 3D and I didn't watch it. I thought, what's the point of it? And I've heard that word of mouth on this movie is very strong. And it had a huge opening weekend here in the United States. I think around the world, not as impressive, but maybe word of mouth will keep it going. But people were saying that just in the same way that like Raimi loves to just have all these disgusting fluids go not only into their stars' faces, but directly into their mouths on multiple occasions. It is very funny, like someone vomiting while doing CPR, and loves doing that. And apparently, in the same way that he likes to be overt, the 3D is also used in the most like old school 50s style 3D, like shoving things right into your face. And people who saw this in 3D said, oh, you have to see it in 3D. It's so funny. And I can imagine in seeing the movie, I'm like, oh, I know exactly there are certain scenes where he's holding the shot a little too long. I'm like, oh, that's for 3D. So if you get a chance to see it, probably check it out in 3D.
It's on my list for sure.
But yeah, a real blast. Very fun film. And I think it's going to do very well.
Is it one of these things that's post-production 3D, or was it shot in 3D, or
no, it's post. Yeah, it definitely was post-production. The budget on this is relatively small, so it's
yeah.
Although there are a couple of films that it's directly imitating. There are shots that are lifted directly from Castaway, but to a comedic effect is very funny. They obviously know you've seen that film. And also this whole kind of societal commentary on the rich and the poor is right out of, once again, feeling like it is commenting directly on Triangle of Sadness. And there are some themes that definitely overlap there. It's very smart, very funny, very in your face in every possible way. And McAdams is so up for it. She's having such a blast. And her character has to do so many different shades of performance and never feels cartoonish. Her acting style and his directing style are perfectly on the same tempo. And Dylan O'Brien's really good as well, but he has to play like the stuck-up jerk. So it's less variation to his performance versus hers. But yeah, she's obviously having a great time. Raimi's having a great time. And I'd love to see Raimi, instead of doing another $300 million Spider-Man movie, he's talking about maybe now doing another Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire in it. And they're apparently considering this, but more small budget films. Like this film is going to make money, almost certainly. There's no reason to make more of these. And everything does not have to be a giant $200 or $300 million tentpole picture.
That's awesome. I love Rachel McAdams. She just looks like such a fun girl to hang out with. She just looks so sweet and also so funny. There was plenty of bodily fluids in Triangle of Sadness too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God, that the whole sequence on the boat.
But every time I do a first aid course, the instructor always says that you got to be aware of some people throwing up when you're doing mouth-to-mouth resuscitations. I always think about that.
Well, you'll think about it even more after you see this movie.
Can't wait.
Oh, and just really quickly circling to the box office, just something we've discussed here. Speaking of films that on a different budget, I was a big fan of the new 28 Years Later sequel. But despite the fact that I personally, and we've had this conversation multiple times now, I felt like I was in the minority that critically, at least, that first film got rave reviews. Audiences were not that hot on that first film. Unfortunately, they didn't turn up for the second film. And the box office on that film now, as it's basically going to leave theaters within the next week or so in the US, is still below the opening weekend for the first film. And overseas, it has just cracked it now after 3 weeks what the first film made in its opening weekend. So all that is to say that the film is going to make not even maybe 40% of what, maybe less than that, of what the first film made, which even though I was saying, well, they got to make the third one at this point, I don't know, unless a streamer is willing to put this directly on one of their platforms, I do not think we're going to see a theatrically released, at least not a theatrically released version of that third film. Maybe in 5 years we get the conclusion and it goes straight to Netflix or something. But yeah, I do not think we're going to see in any near term the third film of that series, unfortunately.
Well, that's sad. I don't know how they stuffed up the release of the second one. Maybe they needed to wait longer because it's such a good film. And you'd think that people that saw the first one would be gagging to see the second one. But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that there probably some folks, I think a large percent of the population, the more general audience, probably did not really like that first chapter and didn't turn out for the second. And it's unfortunate, like you said, because I think the word of mouth on this one is much stronger, but I think it's a little too late for people to jump in later now. Yeah, unfortunate, because I would like to see that third chapter for sure.
Oh, well, Danny Boyle can jump onto something else, and I'm sure it'll be amazing.
I'm sure he has something else on the way already. So Garland's already working on something else. So
yeah, that guy doesn't stop.
It's true. He's like pounding out at least one movie a year, sometimes two. Okay, so before we get into episode 4 of Industry, what did you think of episode 3? The slurp heard around the world, as I said in my solo coverage. But other than that scene, or you could comment on that as well, what did you think of last week's episode?
I loved it. Classic Industry. We were talking about the creators not directing, and I think this is a woman director, and I think she directed episode 4 as well. Yeah. I don't know why, but women directors get the hottest sex scenes on film. Amazing. Yeah, just a classic Industry episode. I'm really enjoying watching this show. I got to say, week to week, it is the top of my list, and I'm just loving the dialogue. It's just going nuts. I don't understand it. Right. I think last night I was watching this latest episode. I just kept rewinding it 10 seconds back, 10 seconds back, just to see if it's necessary to understand it. And I don't think it is. I think it's just fun. Yeah, it's just the buzzwords and the synergies and to get it all out there, just to push everything forward, get this forward momentum. Yeah. Heaps of Harper last week. Not so much Harper this week, but yeah, I thought it was a good one. I liked Eric. I liked him in his bathrobe, hanging out in the office. Yeah, really cool. And yeah, I don't know. Oysters are fun, aren't they?
This week's episode is called 1000 Utes. Utes, Yoots. One Marilyn. And the 1000 Utes, I'm pretty sure, are a reference to Bonnie Blue and her 1000 young men that she had on her OnlyFans. And One Marilyn, of course, is related to something in the dialogue very late, which comes full circle on the way to that conversation at the very beginning, because it comes from Charlie Heaton, right? Charlie Heaton at the very beginning of the episode is going to visit his son. Apparently, he had sex with this girl one time and she got pregnant. And she's the one who's bringing up the fact that, talking about the commodification of sex and how when you get to 1,000 people, that obviously this girl is not even having sex with a person anymore. She's just having sex with a number, she literally says. It's like, and she's talking about the level of depersonalization in the culture. And he doesn't want to have anything to hear about this. He's just distracted and talking about the kid and trying to come to an arrangement. And apparently, obviously, or I should say, occupied by this investigation he's on. And although he's still trying to be a father in this particular case, not doing a great job of it. And then, of course, at the very, very end of the episode, he brings up in a conversation with another dad, another very bad dad, who's also alienated from his infant child in Rishi, and having a conversation about how our grandfathers were great and they would paint Marilyn on the side of a plane. And that was like the hottest woman they'll ever see. And now, like in a day, we are exposed to thousands of, pornographic images perpetually. They're just inundated with it. And again, talking about this commodification of sex, which I guess now, when you consider Tender as well, and we also have a scene that takes place in a strip club this week, that not only is it a theme for this episode, but I guess a theme for the entire season to some extent.
Poor old Charlie. There's sex, talking about sex happening all around him, and he has sex with
Yes.
one woman, and he
One
gets her
time,
pregnant.
and he's got, exactly. That is an interesting point you bring up, that this journalist, not only is that he has had sex with this one woman and gotten pregnant, and of course, maybe that is like PTSD for that as well, but he didn't even take advantage of the opportunity he had at the beginning of the season when he could have slept with Haley. And Haley, on the other hand, very sexually liberated, as we see in this particular episode. Well, even more so last week, right? So obviously it's right in the title, a big concern this year in this: sex as power, sex as a commodity, sex as business. So a couple of things I wanted to bring up. I have so many things to say about this episode. I don't even know where to start with, but let's start with maybe we'll circle back to something that happened in the previous episode. Obviously that cut from the rendezvous between the three of them to the breakfast scene. What did you think about Whitney saying to Yasmin and Haley that if taking care of Henry was too much of a burden, that maybe Haley should take half the load off of Yasmin? What did you think about that?
All I can think about. Now, okay, this happened in someone else's house, so he didn't bug the room unless he's in cahoots with those Austrians that did bug the room, and so he knows what's going on. But I'm starting to think that he's in cahoots with Haley and that she's leaked information to him about this sexual tryst that he can leverage power from. But otherwise, why would he say... I don't get why he would say something like that unless he's just incredibly incisive and he's guessed it.
Yes, somehow he picked up on that, especially that terminology. But yeah, I thought the same thing because they played it off. You have an interesting theory there. When Yasmin just looks at her, side eyes, they look at each other like they're shocked in the moment. So it seems like he just accidentally said that. And it could be, it's a turn of phrase that almost makes sense in the way he said it, although it seems like a wild coincidence, obviously. But your theory maybe makes more sense. Maybe we just go to there. We're just going to jump around the episode. I'm not going to break it down scene to scene because there's just too much to discuss. But what do you think about poor Charlie Heaton, his character, whose name I still can't remember, that he is dragged into this situation where he thought he was doing the right thing and now has lost his job because he definitely crossed a line, but maybe not the worst line. And now he's taking the full brunt of this. He's taking the blame for this. The story's being buried. Obviously, it seems very ascendant that the Tender situation is on the way up. They have gotten funding from Pierpoint, right? So here Pierpoint's back again into the picture, funding this particular platform, this banking platform. But now the government is behind it as well, and they're wanting this thing to succeed. So, of course, they will facilitate this cover-up if need be at this point. So it looks like this journalist obviously taking the worst of it. And of course, Harper and Eric are really floundering. They're in a very dangerous situation. They have all their eggs in this basket. Eric's made a terrible decision to actually put all of his personal savings into this thing. It's very importantly at this moment. This short looks like it is not going to pan out. But of course, we're in the middle of the season, exactly in the middle of the season, and everything's going to change, I'm sure, by the end of the season. But I really do feel bad for this journalist guy who nearly dies. I don't think they have actually killed him off. Do you think he's dead here at this point?
I can't see that he's dead, no. But yeah, it's very interesting. Comes back to the very first scene of this season with him crossing the line. And he did cross the line. I really liked the scene with his editor. And his editor is a very nice guy, a very understandable guy. And he said, you knew you crossed the line as soon as you went to that girl's house. The sexual assault, it probably didn't happen. And it's not important because he's a journalist and he did cross that line to get the story. So he's in the mud. He had to get terminated, unfortunately, because I thought he was just about to uncover the story proper. But the stuff that Harper is doing is complete market manipulation, and she's almost really trying to cause Tender to fail so she can get this money. It's a little bit crazy, but she's an absolute savage and she'll do what she can. And Eric, I think, I mean, his poor daughters are going to lose their inheritance. It's not to beat around the bush. But yeah, he's just going to be dragged into this with Harper, and she's just relentless. And I don't think she has any morals, really. She's just going to cross every line that she can to win.
And that's also problematic because she has been caught doing such in the past, back when she was, within a more structured banking situation. But once again, Eric had put over invested in this very risky proposition, but all they're doing is shorting, right? Like, you take a huge risk when you are shorting a stock that is ascendant and just hoping that everything goes your way. And if you saw the scenes from next week, they, of course, are talking about this. Speaking of that, if you saw the scenes from next week, something that they just touch on briefly in this episode, but is, it's going to pay off importantly, and even more so in the next episode. But it's the fact we've already seen that Whitney is perpetually traveling to Africa. And at this point, they're going to investigate what exactly is happening there, because we did discover last week that there obviously is something shady going on with the banking situation in Tender, although primarily all they seem to be doing is taking these small transactions and bucketizing them, so that if you buy a bouquet of flowers and someone is paying a sex worker that same amount, you just put it into the same bucket and you say, oh, these were all bouquet of flowers. But of course, it could be gambling, it could be sex work, it could be just money laundering in general. And they're still doing all the shady stuff. And this poor guy in Scotland, this guy's just in his, living with his mom. And that's the physical address for their office and corporation. And he's just doing this thing manually. And apparently they have people everywhere doing this type of thing. But yet something else, even more so, is happening in Africa. And Whitney's continuously traveling out there. And it looks like everyone is heading there to continue this investigation. And of course, as you mentioned, this fund that Eric and Harper are managing, they basically have all their eggs in this basket. They need to make this thing come true. Like you said, even if they have to put the thumb on the scale, but it seems like there probably is something very shady going on out there.
Yeah, totally shady. I think Henry's like, why is Whitney always going to this Accra? What's he got to do there for 24 hours? They've also introduced another character who we haven't seen yet, just seen in a photograph shaking hands with some of the Ghanaian people with a giant novelty check. And I'm sure that guy's going to come into it next week, and we're going to see the depths of depravity that they're doing over there, which could be anything.
Yeah, and apparently they made this guy the CEO of some shell company out there, and he has no resume at all. He just came out of nowhere and is now the CEO of this shell company that they're probably using to funnel a lot of these transactions through.
Another guy that's failing upwards, like Henry.
Yes. Speaking of failing upwards, like Henry, what do you think of this whole sequence we see where Whitney, which first of all, when Cal Penn is, I think he's going to be a much bigger part of this taking Whitney down. He obviously has some anger over the way that all played out, but he probably got paid very well, so he's willing to keep his mouth shut. But apparently, based on the conversation he has with Sweet Pea, and Sweet Pea, by the way, being a little alluring on the phone, knowing that that's how she's getting this information from him. So again, another example of, using sex appeal to get what you want.
What a great scene, by the
Yeah.
way, in the strip club, how he goes
Yes.
from the audience into the private dance. He's getting worked on the phone. He's getting worked on the lap. Yeah. He's just handing out cash. I mean, he is such a fun character.
But he obviously mentioned something very important, which is that they never saw Whitney get drunk and they never saw him have sex with anybody. But of course, we do know that he has sex because he had sex with Harper in the second episode, his own version of it as well. But of course, when they would go and party with this guy, everybody else was partying hard, but he was always in control. So it's very interesting because we've seen that in his behavior here. But what I was going to mention is every time we see Whitney and Henry in a scene together, even earlier, they're always like shot where their faces are like very close to each other, even if they're not. Like it's just the way the camera's placed. But I did think about that again. They're actually not looking at each other, but they put the way they photograph it, their faces are like right up against each other, even though they're looking in different directions. But then he grabs his arm, and then when Yasmin walks in, he releases it, which I thought was a very provocative way to photograph that. It almost makes it look like she saw something that was more provocative than it actually was. So that made me interested in the fact that, what is the show trying to say there? Are they saying that he's trying to make her jealous, Whitney that is, or is he actually interested in him in that way? I'm not sure, but I think there's going to be some payoff to this tension in this season.
Oh, totally. Their faces are uncomfortably close together. And you're right. You're not sure whether Whitney's obviously working him, but you're not sure whether he is actually interested in him sexually. He couldn't know that Yasmin was going to come in while he's holding the guy's shoulders, but it's just a happy coincidence. And I'm wondering if Yasmin, does she feel jealousy? Or is she turned on by this possible
we don't, at this point, it's possible.
Because she seems to love complicated sexual relationships. But yeah, I don't know where Whitney's going with this, but with his deep Batman-type voice, he's got a lot going on, and he's got a broader vision that I think he's controlling everyone. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see which way he goes.
And the dynamic there is really interesting because Yasmin seems surprised at that moment when she opens the door, as if she caught them in something more inappropriate than it actually was. But like you mentioned, is it the sexual tension she's afraid of, or is it something else? Because when Henry gets on stage, it gets very confessional about his own insecurities, and apparently goes over really well with these investors. And then he runs off stage. He does not give her a hug. He gives Whitney a hug or a handshake or whatever he does, but he's very excited. He feels like Whitney really did a great job of pumping him up. And you'd say, oh, then she must be really unhappy with this relationship with Whitney, but that's not what's happening at all. Whitney's actually propping her up as well. And as a matter of fact, gave her a promotion, and she got to fire her boss this very week.
So good the way she accepts the job. And then accepts the responsibility of firing Robin straight away.
Right away, exactly.
Cold, callous. I love her. But it is interesting because Yasmin had the same idea of getting personal on stage with Henry that Whitney did as well. So they both were connected in the same way that you should show your insecurities on stage to get the audience on side, and then you can talk about tender. So, yeah, and the fact that he credited it all to Whitney was quite interesting.
Yeah, and a week ago, he, I guess this tryst that she coordinated is messing with his head, because at the beginning of last week's episode, he says to her that you saved my life. And now he still seems to be like giving her the cold shoulder.
Yeah, he's like, do you have a lorazepam? She's like, no, you can't have one. He's like, I really want one. Oh, okay, I can give you one. No, you're an enabler.
You're sabotaging me, yeah.
Are you testing me? He's like, well, yeah, he is testing you.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know what to say to this guy anymore. He is way too high maintenance, I got to say. First of all, she's conniving, so it's hard to have a lot of sympathy for her. but I still sympathize to some extent with the fact that he is being intolerable. And like you said, she gives him the exact same advice and gets none of the credit for it. Right. And Yasmin's in the middle of this very sticky situation that she's making for herself, no pun intended there. But what do you think of when they're in the elevator together later on? And Haley at this point has got a perfect read on Yasmin. I found it very interesting, that dynamic, by the way, that earlier on, I feel like Yasmin, other than getting this promotion, feels like she's losing control of things that she set in motion, which, by the way, has happened to her also previously on this show in other seasons in different contexts. But I think thinks that she is telling Haley, right, he abused you, he took advantage, we can get him fired for that. And she's nodding her head. And I think she feels like she is getting in Haley's head, only for Haley to be like, oh, I know what you want me to say, mommy, in the elevator. And she's like, what? Who's this girl?
Oh, look, the elevator scene was great, but I think that earlier scene that really set the boundaries for it. It was horrible seeing her gaslight Haley into feeling like Jim was sexually assaulting her, but Henry and Yasmin were not sexually assaulting her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The way exactly. It's exactly what a sexual predator says.
Incredible.
It does, in those types of positions of power, being like, you wanted that, right? We're all adults here, aren't we? We weren't in the office when this happened, right? It's like all this, which, like, as if that makes it, you're on a business trip, as if this made it any better at any of the circumstances. Obviously an abuse of power, in other words.
Yeah.
Much worse than what this journalist did, by the way.
Absolutely. It's an employee. But I think I read of a link between Yasmin and Ghislaine Maxwell, and I thought it did come through in that scene. She almost had her hair similar to that lady, and she had the way that she manipulates the power into getting into the person's good books, but also reframing the whole thing to make her being sympathetic rather than the actual villain. And then it comes all to a head in the elevator, and Haley shows her true colors, and I'm all for it. Being a child model must be hell on earth.
I can only imagine what she went through as a child model. Yes. And it's all, this is coming home to roost, as you say right now.
Absolutely. And she plays it perfectly. The dialogue's incredible in that scene, and the way that she finishes it off is just superb. Pure industry. Love it.
Yeah, and also in that dialogue that my old boss used to say to me, that if it all gets to be too much, baby, again, speaks to how inappropriate that relationship probably was, then remember that none of us make it out of this alive. And we go from there directly to the Rishi and this journalist having Rishi fully backsliding into his worst habits. Let's talk about Rishi here. I forgot. There's so many things that happened to him in this episode as well. First of all, we find out that he's dealing coke to make ends meet, and he's maybe running a prostitution ring as well, and videotaping his activities in the car. Like, basically, this guy. Oh, and while he's doing that, his mother-in-law, his ex, I guess is still mother-in-law, is FaceTiming him about when he's going to visit his child. And I guess we get a little bit of detail. I was curious to find out if there were going to be some detail in what ended up happening here. When they said that this whole murder of the wife was pinned on this schizophrenic character, was that his friend, or was it some random person that they pinned this on? Do you have a read on that?
I assumed it was the hitman, the guy that actually shot his wife, the guy that he owed money to. That's what I was assuming.
And that apparently he got off with a light sentence because he apparently has a mental disorder. He had schizophrenia.
Okay. Yeah, that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, interesting. I didn't see any signs of him having that issue, but who knows? He did seem pretty erratic there when he's killing the wife at that moment.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, it all brought it back. It was great to see Rishi back. We haven't seen him really since that bottle episode last season when he just went to hell. So it was good seeing that he's still ambitious at whatever level he is at. Yeah, and giving his customers clothing advice if they're going to be in the front room at the bank, I think is great.
And then, of course, he's been tracking this, and it sounds like he's been fired by Harper. So he's hitting rock bottom here. runs into this journalist who coincidentally is also at his rock bottom. They're doing coke and drinking at his house. They pick up some random dude at this bar as well and head back to, that's Rishi's apartment, correct?
Yes. Yeah, because he's hidden drugs in the toilet.
Right. Yeah. Like, how did he know that was there unless he did a very thorough? Oh, no, that's right. Because we saw the Charlie Heaton character's apartment earlier. Because apparently Rishi's been there too. He saw the window had been open partially, and he starts getting very paranoid that that guy outside might be snooping on him. But it's just Rishi being Rishi. But I have to say something, that the end of this episode with all that very fast talking, overlapping dialogue, and Ultravox is playing. If you're going to play Vienna and Forever Young, someone's got to die at the end of this episode. I got to tell you, you can't get away with that and not kill somebody off. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. The way they threw you into this Coke binge, it was
Yes.
like, it reminded me of Goodfellas or something. It was just,
Right.
I don't know if you've been to parties that are similar to that kind of vibe, but my goodness, it gives me nightmares.
There was something really powerful about when he's saying, of course, he knows. That's the other thing that was interesting, the revelation here that we had suggested here on the podcast. Like, how could Rishi just be out there? This would have to have been a story that people knew about, right? This is a shocking turn of events. Even if it's just someone who was somewhat successful, rich, up and coming banker, and then this horrible thing happens. He's into this gambling debt and his wife gets murdered. What a crazy story. And of course it is, like, people know who he is on the streets. And he asks him, like, what was it like to actually be there when she died? And he starts flashing back on it. And this is when he starts feeling the urge. We see him wanting to throw himself out that window. And then when the police show up, he decides to do it. But of course, he even can't get that right. Apparently not high up enough to do anything but smash both of his ankles.
Jim can't help himself by digging into the story, can he? And then when Rishi does mention something like suicide, Jim just slaps him like, what do you... Yeah.
Realizing you're too much of a narcissist to imagine a world without you in it.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, he must have known that he wasn't high enough to kill himself. Surely. I don't know. But you'd almost rather get knocked out than deal with your legs absolutely shattered and the cops on your tail and you go into jail or hospital, and just how much more pain can this guy suffer?
Oh, he's definitely going to jail again. I'm sure whatever probation he's on, he has violated that for sure. But so another desperate and even more desperate character. My personal opinion, I like Rishi on the show. I think they should have killed him off. It would have been a fitting way to have something really consequential happen. And maybe as an example of, again, I forget his name, the Charlie Heaton character, you just said his name, Jim.
Yeah.
For example, to Jim to be careful, because that's where he's headed as well. But no, he'll live to fight another day or steal someone else's phone or something.
What I love about this show is that when he's sitting on the balcony, I genuinely did not know what was going to happen. I didn't know if he was going to jump. I didn't know if the cops were going to pull him back. I didn't know if he was going to jump and survive, jump or die. And I love that about this show, is that you just don't know. Usually with movies, you're like, oh, okay, I know exactly what's happening. This is what's going to happen. But I was just on the edge of that balcony with him. What's going to happen? And that's what I love about it.
I got to tell you something. I was a little irritated at times during this episode, this show trying so hard to push so many buttons, even though the show's been much more graphic in sex and violence as well. And for some reason, this one felt a little more try hard. But I like having this conversation with you, basically. And I liked it a lot better now that we've talked it all out. So it's this entertaining. This conversation made the whole thing more entertaining in retrospect. So let's say. I do have one criticism that I want to run by you and tell me if you feel the same way, because I think you're going to disagree because you've made the opposite argument. I think that the show, for me, part of what I'm butting up against in this season is that there was something about being on the trading floor in the previous season that allowed them to be as crazy as they wanted to be. They could have a crazy night out. There could be crazy sex stuff happening. And sometimes it's happening like in the bathroom while the traders are still on the floor. But there was somehow that, since you had to have some level of decorum, the show itself had to allow these people to somehow reset every day and show up for work and do the work, even if they were out of control at home. There was something that stabilized the show. And this season has just been so all over the place for me that I don't know what to pay attention to sometimes. And maybe I liked it, where they had this trading floor to ground the show and the characters a little bit more. But I know that maybe you disagree with me, because I think early this season, you were talking about how you liked the fact that they were freed from having to go be on the same set all the time, basically in front of their monitors.
Yeah, I understand your criticism. They've done that, right? They did that for 3 seasons, and I did love it as well. And I loved the fact that you can do whatever you want to do overnight, during the night. You don't even have to sleep, but you've got to be there at 9 o'clock for when the markets open, and you've got to somehow do your job in the most aggressive way possible, which I loved. But yeah, it's a different show. Right. We talked about the last episode of season 3 being a sensible conclusion to the whole thing. And so now it seems like it's reset and they can do whatever they want to do. I do get caught up in sometimes just the nonsense that they say. There was a real section in the middle of this episode where they were just pushing everything forward in all different boardrooms. Yes. But it's fun. It's funny that I understand what they're doing. You're not supposed to follow it so discreetly. And yeah, the fact that they've got a larger palette to play with, they can really go anywhere. I'm enjoying it so far, but I can definitely understand that criticism for sure.
Yeah, it's been a little tough for me here and there. I'm still obviously really fascinated by the characters in general. I just feel like the show sometimes gives me a headache for some of the reasons you said. First of all, it's that it moves around from scene to scene, even from one episode to the other. They're on the outs with the current political powers, then they're in again the very next episode. And maybe that's commentary of its own, but it just gives me a little bit of whiplash sometimes. And yeah, and like I said, maybe for me, I was just more comfortable with them having to do that, like reset on a regular basis. I felt like there were definitely sections of the earlier seasons where I didn't know exactly what the machinations of the deals were. And it became clear by the end of the season where I could figure it all out. And maybe I'm just being impatient in a way. So that's probably what's happening. And by the way, all 3 seasons, I either binged the entire season or I binged parts of the season. Like the most recent season 3, I think I binged the entire thing so that I can watch the last 2 episodes in real time. And then I think season 1 was a full binge. I didn't watch it until season 2 came out. So all that is to say that maybe some of that frustration was there as well, but I could always just push play in the next episode and things got clearer over time. So maybe the same thing will happen. It's just me, we're just parsing it much more discreetly, like you said, one episode at a time. So maybe I'm just a little frustrated because I need to know what the full picture is. And they just simply haven't shown us what that is yet.
And the industry is famous for the trading floor scenes. Yes. Even when Harper went to another office, there was still those kind of workplace scenes that were really full on. But at the moment, her and Eric's setup, no one's there. We're not seeing like live, real time kind of market shifts that we've got to be on top of. I'm sure we're going to see it with this short. That time is going to come, but it hasn't come yet. And Pierpoint, the name is still hanging around. So I feel like that should come back into it. Otherwise, just flick it off forever. We don't even need to see the name because it's now owned by some Arab money. And it's there in name only, which is a bit weird. So I must say I do miss the trading floor scenes, but it's going to come. When tender's on the high, when it's just about to drop, that's when we're going to be there for sure.
I do remember how thrilling those scenes were, like when Harper had that short and everyone's telling her to sell and she's holding it. And then she turns out to be right. But then, the other trader pulled the trade behind her back, basically. And just that whole thing was just incredible to watch, obviously, in real time. Just truly thrilling. And but like you said, there may very well be where it's all on the line and everything's coming together towards the end of the season. And, we already saw here, right, where Tender's getting this financing as well. On both sides, we see like the financing coming in for Tender, and it doesn't look like it's a very risky way that they're financing this bank. And also, of course, very risky how we see the whole outline of how this short is being funded as well, and how Eric's money, for example, is the last payback. So everyone gets paid back before Eric. So if this short doesn't pay out, he gets zeroed out. Like that's, the worst possible outcome for him. So all of this, everybody has everything on the line here. So it's going to very high stakes for later in the season, I'm sure. One more question I have for you is this, and maybe this is just for me, it's commentary possibly, but this whole idea that the UK government and everyone is so excited, this guy's going to create a banking app that allows anybody to invest in all this. Is this really that revolutionary? It doesn't seem to be that very revolutionary technology. Doesn't the technology like this already exist? Like I have, I put my money in Wealthfront and we manage our money through there. And, we can open an IRA or an investment account or a bond account. And what is so revolutionary about, do you have any idea what makes this thing so differentiated?
I think just the fact that it's in one app. I don't know about you, but I've got about half a dozen banking apps on my phone with money in all different things. And then some I only access through the internet. So mine's everywhere. But I think that's what they're trying to sell is this one-stop shop where everything goes into this one app and gets distributed to all these funds.
Yeah, we have consolidated most of our accounts, although we still have a few dangling out there. But every time like something matures, I just try to consolidate it into one. And the other thing I was thinking about is that there are certain things that you can't invest in, right? Like, if you want to do venture capital, some of those funds, you have to be at a certain threshold, which most people obviously cannot be that rich. So I guess there's certain things that people can't invest in unless you are very wealthy. But they should be more specific because what he's pitching here does not seem to be like, oh, it's an app where you invest your money and it teaches you how to save money at the same time. Like my nephews use Robinhood and Robinhood does that too. I'm just like, I don't know if this is really that revolutionary, but who knows, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes these apps go down and so I've got to grab it from a different app and sometimes my Google Wallet doesn't work and so I've actually got to pull out a card that I've got stuffed in my boot somewhere. So yeah, I don't know. But if everything is in this tender app and that goes down or there's a glitch, everyone's money is tied up.
Yeah, that's a good point too, right? If this whole thing goes bust, then that would be catastrophic for people who are using this platform for sure. Yeah, but I guess maybe we'll get more details on all of that as well. And yeah, of course, next week, I think they're either in Africa next week or heading to Africa next week. So we'll see how that all pays out.
And yeah, he was going to float his own money to go to Africa. He really wanted to get to Accra.
Yeah, he might be heading there, actually. He might be one of the people heading in that direction.
Interesting. Well, I hope
if he survives. Maybe he's still in the hospital, actually. So.
Oh, my God. Just chuck him in the cold shower or something. Surely they got to him pretty quickly. I don't know. But yeah, Rishi's gear must be pretty strong, although they just kept doing it and doing it all night.
Exactly. Rishi's not going anywhere.
And who was the guy that kept turning the music up? He's associated with Whitney, I suppose.
Is he? He's just some random guy like that isn't that just the guy at the club who was saying like, I've seen this guy before, watch out, he's going to try to steal your wallet and stuff, which might be true, by the way, of Rishi. And then he just says, yeah, come along with me. And he's just like, okay. After accusing him of crime. So it's like,
yeah, I don't know, because there was a few sus little shots of him and the fact that he just kept turning the music up because he wanted the cops to come and bust them. That's what I thought his motivation was.
Yeah, I had not even thought of that, but I think you are correct. He's turning the music up and then he says, I'm going to go buy some beer. So who made the call about the noise? Mm-hmm. He may very well have made the call himself.
Yeah, so that's why I think he's one of either Yasmin or Whitney's dogs that they've, suck on them.
Yeah.
They've let them go.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then he may have been following one or the other and like piggybacked on that whole situation. Yeah, interesting. And then orchestrated that whole thing.
Yeah, because he had his own drugs as well. He was like, my shout, boys. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, wow. I didn't even think about that. The conspiracy broadens.
It gets deeper and deeper.
All right, Darren. Thanks for the conversation again. Have a great week. And finish up Wonder Man. Maybe we'll discuss that a little further next week. Did you even bother with The Beauty at all? Have you watched more of that?
Oh, look, I turned it on and I was interested in it, but it was just like this chase sequence with this beautiful model. It exploded at the end, kind of like the boys type thing.
Yes.
My wife just looked at me going, why are we even watching this? So I was like, okay, that's my tip to change the streaming channel. So yeah, I didn't continue with it. And I think I heard you guys talk about it and I went, okay, Ryan Murphy's up to his old tricks again. And I might not seek that out at the top of my list.
You know what? I may have watched more of this, especially if the episodes remain short, if it was available as a binge. But I have to tell you that I like the first 3 episodes. It says things it raises very big questions. It's very intelligent in a moment for like a minute, and then it goes into its usual routine. But at least it raises some interesting questions here and there. But I did watch the following week, the 4th episode that came out. And I got to tell you, by the end of that 4th episode, I was so tired. I'm like, I don't think I'm watching this anymore. Possibly if there had been another episode after that, I might have kept pushing play. But I think I've tapped out at episode 4. It's just so probably not worth pursuing unless I hear, something encouraging further along. I doubt I'm going to go back to this thing again. It's just too little. There's actually some pretty good fight scenes and action sequences. It's a strange mix of different things, but the ideas are there, but it's just like one scene per episode. And I'm like, it's not enough for me to pursue this any further. So another Ryan Murphy show that I will not finish.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate, but at least it gives space for other shows.
Yes, there's so many other things to watch. So, and of course, the Olympics are starting. That's what I'll be primarily watching. So we'll be watching that. Oh, and the Super Bowl. We're having a little Super Bowl party here on the Sunday. So the Super Bowl. And that's another thing I should bring up for the audience in general. HBO is going to release the next episode of Industry and the next episode of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms this Friday because of the Super Bowl. So we'll get to see those episodes even earlier.
That's good news. Yeah, the Super Bowl is probably the only game of American football that I follow. Maybe I don't watch it, but I have it on and follow it. Yeah, and the Winter Olympics as well. Australia's got a few sneaky little entrants in a few different events. I'm not sure of the time difference. Might be challenging to watch it, but they've been bigging it up here. So yeah, we're going to have a bit of a squeeze on that as well.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but there's probably not as many winter sports activities there. And although you guys snowboard, so I'm sure there's some Australians involved in the Olympics as well.
Yeah, we're good at snowboarding. We're good at the kind of acrobatic skiing type thing. I think there's a girl in the like slalom skiing type of thing. Yeah, so look, I'm not an expert Winter Olympian commentator or follower, but I'll try to watch as much as I can.
All right. So that's all to come. And and everybody out there, do check out the earlier releases of those episodes. If you're like, oh man, I won't be able to watch that on Sunday because of the game or because of the Olympics. Well, watch it on Friday because the episodes will be released earlier and we'll discuss them next week, Darren.
That's good news. Awesome.
All right, Darren. Thanks.
Cheers, Victor. Thank you.
And for anybody else who's been watching The Night Manager and watched the season finale, the very exciting season finale of Season 2 last night, my conversation with Sona begins right now. Hi, Sona. I wanted to have this episode come out sooner because it is, of course, the season finale. And not only a season finale that, we complain that season finales don't really have a lot of action, don't really set things up. It's really just a teaser for the next season. Well, not the case with The Night Manager Season 2. So quite an eventful episode. So I figured the sooner we get this out, the better.
Okay, but before we start talking about The Night Manager.
Yes.
It was your birthday this weekend. How was your day? Did you do anything to celebrate?
It was very mellow as I have gotten older. I honestly forgot this was even coming up. So it was very chill. Like, first of all, on my actual birthday, we just hung around the house in our PJs. My daughter hung out with me all day long. Didn't even want to have any of her friends over. So we just hung out all day. We played, I don't know if anybody's done this, but on Netflix, they have these new games you can play. So we played like Pictionary together and some of the other games that are available there. And it was a very chill day. My family came over for a little bit. We ordered Thai food. So we still have leftovers in the fridge. And then yesterday, we actually, because it was more convenient for everybody, we actually went to Newark and we all had dinner together. And my nephews came and my sister came and my parents came. So it was a big, pretty big party by our standards. And we tried out a different Portuguese restaurant. We always go to the same one. And there's so many of them down there. So we tried a different one. And it was very good. Very expensive too, by the way. Little sticker shock. Right.
If not for your birthday, then when?
Exactly. So yeah, it was a nice, mellow birthday celebration.
Well, wishing you the best. I hope the year ahead is amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And Kim continues to be on the podcast talking about The Pit. And we had our first review for her. We actually shared it with her yesterday. So thanks for the kind words people giving. Said that her breakdown of the medical coverage is perfect amount of detail. So anyway, encouraged her with that.
Good for her. That's fantastic.
And now I'm thinking about what other medically themed TV shows could we have?
Well, I
Actually,
feel like
Scrubs,
everything is doctors, lawyers, or police officers, right?
that didn't seem to be the case with the whole Prestige, but you know what? That's all coming back. So the Scrubs reunion is coming at the end of this month, so maybe that would be an extension of our medical coverage here on
Maybe.
the podcast. Oh, and another reason I was motivated to get this episode out quickly. Don't know this person's name, obviously, but he has reached out, or they, I should say, don't know the gender of this person, obviously, has reached out multiple times via YouTube. And do comment once again if anybody wants to comment or send us any feedback. Email us, need some introduction at gmail.com. Excuse me. Or you can comment on Spotify. That's where that very nice comment, one of the comments came in for Kim, was via Spotify. And also on YouTube, any comments there. So we have actually heard from this person before. The initials are XFA. Don't know who that is, but from South America, from Argentina, actually.
Cool.
And interesting that we're hearing from South America with the night agent obviously set in Colombia, but very enthusiastic about the turn of events here on the show. And wanted to shout out, after I wasn't mocking him, by the way, mentioning that Tom Hiddleston mocked Hugh Laurie for being older, and someone shouting out that Hugh Laurie's still very sexy, regardless of his age. And I'm like, yes, I think he got the better of him in that interaction last week. So I am not poo-pooing Laurie's attractiveness as an older person, obviously. And speaking of getting the better of him, it got the better of everybody
Yeah.
in this week.
Yeah. And by the way, Tom Hiddleston's showing his age a bit as well. It has been 10 years.
Exactly. He's lost his step here, especially when he's being beat up by 13-year-olds. So you're probably happy about this as well. What did you think of this as a season finale? What did you think about this episode in general before we start breaking anything down? Oh, and before we get into anything, in case there are spoilers or people who are maybe on the fence about finishing this season, before we get into anything more spoiler specific, for me, my personal opinion is that I was a little on the fence with the show. Did we need this season? I've enjoyed it modestly along the way, but I'm like, how essential is this as a viewing experience? I actually like the way this changes the themes of the show and the direction of the show and sets up a season 3. I thought this was worthwhile, not only as a season of show, but as setting things up for a potential further seasons of this show. Were you happy with this as a season finale and just as a season in general?
As I have said throughout, this is just a completely different thing than the first season of The Night Manager. And I think, it's hard to remember 10 years back. I am sure the first season required some suspension of disbelief. But I think in order to fully enjoy this season, you really have to completely suspend your disbelief and let a lot of stuff go. I think if you are willing to do that, this is a very, very fun season to watch. I really enjoyed it. I think they did pack a lot into this finale. I think it was really fun. There were definitely a couple of moments that made me gasp. I will say, I'm not sure they landed the whole homoeroticism.
Yes, they were pushing that pretty hard.
It was weird. It was like they set it into motion, but I'm not sure they really finished the thought on the homoeroticism. And I didn't bother me, but it was just weird. Like it felt like an incomplete thought to me. But all in all, I think this was beautiful to watch. I think the actors are beautiful to watch. I think the plot was fun. It had some twists. A lot of stuff happened in the final moments that makes you look forward to the next season. It was very entertaining. I think if you're looking to be entertained, this hits the mark.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I do agree that in general, that so much happens in this. As I was watching it last night, I was picturing this could have been like a long movie instead of a TV series,
Yeah.
where the whole setup could have been about an hour or 45 minutes. And then all the character stuff that happens over the course of 4 episodes or so could have been the middle hour. And then this last hour of the show, this was a very long episode, the longest of the season, could have been like the last 45 minutes. So like this could have been a 2.5 hour, I should say, not 2 hours. It would definitely be too much for a short film, but it could be, the James Bond movies are now pushing 3 hours. So this could have all fit into, with all the twists. There's so many twists just in this one episode that could have been doled out and maybe would have worked better as a film. But I enjoyed all this, and I thought this was a very strong final episode. And my thought at the time, this is not maybe going to connect to you, Sona, but I'm like, oh, they made the Empire Strikes Back of this series where, you have like, you think like, oh, it's going to be like the first movie again, right? Here's the spoilers, everybody. So opt out by chance if you are averse to spoilers at this moment. And if you're here just to hear anything else in the episode, of course, check this timestamps and jump to that conversation point. But in general, yeah, this was the bad guys win in this particular case. And it's a complete and total win for the bad guy. And I did like that as the show is playing out, we suggested this in the last episode. Is Teddy really turned, or is he still working with the dad, or can the dad still win him back? Is he going to betray Pine by the end of the season? Is Roxana in on this, or is she not really betraying him? Is Hugh Laurie maybe setting them all up? This whole Roper setting them all up and fully understands everything that's going on. And interestingly, the show allows that. I thought this is what was really clever about it. Allows all those thoughts to continue until the very, very final reveal, which I thought was very, very clever.
Well, the Roxana thing gets resolved
pretty early. Yes, good point.
Yeah, I agree, though.
Oh, yes. But the one thing that I think is so clunky is, yes, the homoeroticism I thought was so hilarious, especially that moment towards the end where they're in that. And how many times have we seen this where they're like head to head and he goes in and they bump foreheads again? And I'm just like, all right, you either kiss the guy at this point or not. So just stop.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's just like the 8th time that has happened over the course of this show. And of course, speaking of things that oftentimes feel inconsequential at the end of the season, and even here, we're like, oh, I hope Basil's not dead, but he got killed off screen. Who knows? Maybe he survived, maybe he did not. All these questions. Shockingly, at least two, absolutely overt deaths right here.
Yeah.
So pretty shocking turn of events. Let me walk through the plot a little bit because I'm curious to know how far ahead of them. It's funny, at the very end of the show, I'm thinking, is Roper ahead of them the whole entire time? And then I had to piece it together after the fact and say, no, it's only after he has the conversation with Roxana that he has rewritten the story. So it seemed like it wasn't that he was, because at first I'm like, wow, how much setting up did Roper do for this to work at the end? It seemed a little preposterous. But then I started thinking, no, actually, and it would be pretty simple for him to bypass Teddy because he just has to reroute the plane himself, make that, do the thing that Teddy's in charge of right now and just circumvent him and cut him out of the loop. But I think the decision comes after the whole situation with Roxana. So let's just start there. First of all, Roxana, not a great character, as we've complained on the show. Not, for me, not really redeemed in this episode. And I got to say, maybe unfortunately, she's almost certainly going to be part of the next season, which is maybe not the thing I'm looking for towards the most.
Do you think so? I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
I was thinking that too. It seems like the easiest thing to do would to make her a continuation of in the next season, even if she goes back to Roper has allowed her to leave. So that's he could just tie up loose ends, but I guess she could still be an asset at some point in the future. That's why I feel like she's probably coming back, because he could have just killed her off, or just honestly just forgotten about the show. Could have just forgotten about her at this point if they wanted to. So that's why I feel that, well, maybe they're just leaving their options open for that in the future. But interesting to see what they plan to do with her in the future. I didn't think she was a fully successful character. And what do you think it says about the fact that if Roper had not become paranoid for some other reason, that Pine's rescuing Roxana to a large extent is what has inadvertently set up this betrayal here?
You mean his previous rescue of her, right? In a different episode.
Right. Do you think that, I mean, in a way, if he had not rescued her and left her to her fate, he would have pulled this off? So what do you think that says about this overall?
Well,
those entanglements maybe the show's not trying to say this, like they're trying to say that Pine is right for his compassion, but he may have gotten extra people killed because of his trying to solve everybody's problems. You have to maybe pick your
And it was up until the last moment. He was ready to get her from the bus too,
right.
right? So he constantly is trying to be the savior for the people that he thinks are on the right side, but his judgment is not necessarily always correct. And we were wondering about Roxana too, from our point of view. So I don't think it was so clear that she was on the wrong side. In the end, I think she was a mercenary who flipped back and forth depending on what
Right.
was going to save
Right.
her own skin. And I don't blame her for that, right? We all have a survival instinct. So I guess it wasn't that he misjudged her at every turn, because there were times that she was on his side when she thought it would favor her, right? But yeah, in the end, it was only because he was on the phone with Teddy, because Teddy happened to call him in that moment and said, forget about her.
Yeah, he was basically cluing him in that specifically that
Yeah.
Roxana
Otherwise,
flipped.
it would have been curtains for Pine right there.
Exactly. But more importantly, to the original point of the morality or what the show might be saying about Pine's morality, first of all, she plays the traditional femme fatale role, which oftentimes is this. Not only is she trying to, there is a version of the femme fatale where she's manipulating the hero of the film noir in that particular case, or spy films and film noirs intersect oftentimes, and playing that role. But like you said, oftentimes just a mercenary woman who's trying to get the best option for herself, even when she has limited options, and it just leads inadvertently or by coincidence to the destruction of our hero. And in this particular case, of course, he doesn't die, but there's all this negative fallout for all the reasons you said. First of all, him rescuing her from that car, if she had just been left to her fate, whether she had been killed by Roper or simply imprisoned by her, she would have been out of the loop and would not
Yeah.
have sabotaged the plans.
She's not around to have that final conversation at the house.
Exactly. And also beyond that is the simple fact that if Pine had not diverted himself, he said, well, I can't go and pick her up at the bus stop. I'm going to have to tell her, look, I have to do this first. I will reach out to Sally or someone and get you a safe house and go there. But if he believed that she just escaped from Roper's house and that she's just jumped on a bus and she's going to meet him somewhere, that of course he was suspicious, right? Even before the call came in from Teddy, he was already suspicious and being wary. He doesn't meet her at the bus stop. He tells her to enter so he can surveil what's going on. So there is some suspicion there. But again, if he had simply just not diverted himself and she had been standing in that parking lot by herself and he had never showed up, then she would have just gone back to Roper's and Roper would have done whatever he needed to do. But again, she could not have sabotaged his plans. And there would be no alarm raised to Roper that Teddy was the one who had been passing along the information.
Well, what I'm wondering too, as we're having this conversation, and this kind of goes against what I said a couple of minutes ago, how much of this is driven by morality and how much of this maybe are we supposed to think, I don't know if they really came through on supporting this, is driven by some sort of sexual attraction, the whole you like my skin.
Right. Well,
And I don't think they credibly built up the idea that he's doing this because he has some sort of feelings for her beyond trying to be a savior. But maybe they were trying to, and it just didn't execute.
Yeah, that's something that's maybe complicated here in this show as well. And especially because they're trying to have this attraction between Teddy and him, whether it's mutual or not clear, but definitely on Teddy's part, it seems to be clear that they're trying to indicate that. And that's where it makes all of this complicated for the reason you said. He either is just a savior figure trying to save everybody, and in so doing, he gets more innocent people killed than would have probably been the case otherwise. Or if he had sacrificed her, he would not have gotten these additional people killed and also would have gotten Roper potentially.
Because I'm thinking back to the first season where the Elizabeth Debicki character is someone who he both wants to save, but he does have legitimate feelings for her too.
Yeah, I'm going to rewatch all the Christopher Nolan movies in preparation for the new giant blockbuster coming out this summer, his adaptation of The Odyssey, which of course is going to get a Superbowl promotion and everything this week. So anyway, it'll be very much in the news, and we're going to go through all of his films on this podcast. But the reason I mention all that is just recently, Tenet was on Netflix, his least successful film practically because it came out during the pandemic, but still a blockbuster at the time. But the reason I mention all this, Sona, because I don't think you've seen Tenet, is that Elizabeth Debicki is in that film, and she is the exact same character. She's the mom who's being rescued by the hero. She's the damsel in distress. And this is a problem with, I love Christopher Nolan films, by the way, but almost always has a problem with his female characters. And I couldn't help but see Tenet again. And now watching Night Manager with all the issues I'm having with this season of the Night Manager, but not think about the first season of the Night Manager with there for the exact same reason. It's the way you use this character to, like you said, it's a sexual attraction, but it makes the character too vague and has too little agency in her own right. I should say, I guess, in some ways, has a lot of agency in the development of the plot, but it seems to not have a clear understanding of what the character's intentions are in and of themselves, because it's such a plot contrivance in a way.
Are you comparing that to her character in The Night Manager or to Roxana's character?
I'm thinking more about Roxana's character.
Yeah, makes more sense to me.
Yeah, I just find it funny. Yeah, I'm glad that you put me back on point there, because I'm thinking about the Nolan problem where I did like the Debicki character in The Night Manager. It almost felt like Christopher Nolan was like, oh, based on that, I'm going to put her in this movie. But in Tenet, I feel like it's more of Roxana in this season.
Yeah,
like it's not a good use of the femme fatale type prototype.
That seems to be what you're describing. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's a lot of times in these films, I think about the Bond films where oftentimes that's maybe another stronger analogy. There are so many Bond films, especially the older ones, where the female femme fatale character is both a villain by the end of the film, but still Bond is still trying to rescue her. And then you always ask yourself, why are you trying to rescue her? She tried to kill you 3 times, but it's like, because he just has to save the damsel in distress. And maybe that goes back to the flaw in this particular show, or maybe not a flaw, maybe Pine's character itself. If you do correlate it to how Bond, for example, will try to rescue these villainous characters just because of this moral imperative in those films, and it's never explained other than that's what he does. In a way, that's a stereotype here too. I feel like maybe Pine just wants to save these folks, but I think if there is a point of view being illustrated here, it is that you can't save everybody, right? Like by trying to spin too many, right? Exactly.
But I have to say, the more we talk about this, I love the idea of I love the idea of this female character being the undoing of the whole thing, because I don't think that's like a trope, I think that is different to see a female character play out in this way. And I think they tried to give her some kind of backstory that would help us understand the dad being killed when she was 6 and blah, blah, blah. But either because of the acting or the writing, it just didn't resonate, I think.
Yeah, you say it's not a trope, but in a way it is. There's a bunch of different...
I'm not going to take that Bond thing to mean anything. Right. Movies are not known for their well-developed female characters.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, I wasn't going to say the Bond characters. Okay. I completely agree. In the Bond characters, it literally is she does what she needs to do. She seduces him in one scene. She's the victim. She's actually being coerced. It turns out she actually is the villain in some cases. And regardless, he has to rescue her no matter what, right? Yes, no, that's not a good template. I was actually thinking more in the template of the old school film noirs, where oftentimes...
I'm not so familiar with those, so I'll take your word.
That's what I was going to mention. That I think that's a tighter correlation here, where you'll have either the woman of the shady morality will in the end either have to die to redeem the detective in those films, or alternately is the undoing, right? Like, because he is the whole entire time trying to rescue her. And then in the end, he realizes, oh, she was the one who was working against me the whole time. So that it's kind of an old school template. So I think that's what they're referencing back to. And I do like the fact that there is at least something that's, I'm not sure how to define it, put my finger on it. There's something that's being illustrated here. I think if there wasn't two people he's trying to rescue in the Teddy character as well, and also that they're trying to push the sexual tension there, I think that's what makes it more confusing,
Was
cleaner.
confusing in
Yeah.
the end. I know we're in a modern era of pansexuality and whatever, but I think for this particular show, he just needed to pick a lane.
Yes, I think it muddies the waters because, like you said, if you have a very clean break where he's trying to rescue her and he has this attraction to her potentially, and then that ties into it. Like I said, this is a template we've seen before by having two characters. And if that character, by the way, that exact same character was another male, that could be interesting just in and of itself. But then by having these two characters that are attracted to him also, and maybe he is or maybe is not attracted to either one of them because he doesn't seem to pick one over the other at any point over the course of the show. And all of it is just a little too muddy for what they're trying. I'm not sure what they're trying to explore there, other than just like, it's different. This is different than your usual.
Yes, and it is different. I give them credit for that.
Yes.
Confusing, but different.
True. All this, by the way, all this digression makes us sound a little more negative on the show.
What I'm thinking now is like, in such a stressful situation, who is being driven by sexual desires?
I know, you have much bigger.
Like, your priorities are out of order, are they not?
Totally agreed. That's why I'm saying, actually, that's where I think we'll go back to what the show might be successfully exploring, is that maybe it isn't sexual desire. Maybe the real drive under all this is his need to rescue everybody. And I think this is something that we see in superhero movies and other films as well, where sometimes trying to save everybody and not making a choice and not cutting your losses actually leads to catastrophe. And in this case, again, this is what's shocking, that they are willing to leave the season the way they do, is that these are truly catastrophic outcomes. It's not only that his friends have died, the people who are most loyal to him have paid the price for him trying to rescue Roxana. At the very end of the episode, we're jumping all over the place here, but I think we're at the end of the season. We don't have to have a clean plot breakdown. But we see that he has killed his less favorable son, the one he used like a dog. He has returned to England. He has theoretically taken his other son away from Elizabeth Debicki somehow. I'm not sure how that exactly happened, but has taken him out of school. And we hear on the radio.
Wait. Was Elizabeth Debicki that child's mom, though? I don't think she was. Bio mom.
Wasn't she? I thought she was the bio mom. Maybe I'm confused about that.
I don't know. Maybe I'm confused. It was 10 years ago. Anyway.
He doesn't look anything like the mom, by the way.
I thought she was functionally his mom, but not his biological mom. But I could definitely be mistaken.
That is possible. I actually did not revisit the first season, so I should check to see if that is actually the bio mom or not. But it seemed to be that she does have custody, because there is that angry conversation he has with the other character whose name they said again this week, and I forgot his name, but that that Olivia Colman has the conversation with him in the back of the cab. But when they met last week, he like angrily told him, like, get my son out of that boarding school, pay off the mother, do whatever you need to do. I assumed at that point he was talking about the Elizabeth Debicki character, but I could be wrong.
Okay. AI says, so take it with a grain of salt.
Yes.
She is not the biological mother of Danny. However, she has a biological son of her own whom she left behind to be with Roper.
Oh, wow. That is so complicated.
Yeah.
Well, I did not remember all that level of detail, but fascinating that she, I assume, is now with her biological son. And this adoptive son is with somebody, though, because he does mention that he needs to pay off the mother if you need to. So I guess maybe it's just someone we haven't met.
I don't remember what the explanation was for where the kid's bio mom was in the first season.
But importantly, with all this,
or if she's even alive, I don't know.
True. But with all this, it's just the fact that Roper has a complete win. And we also hear that in Caracas, they've had the blackout and, the
yes,
rioting in the streets. And there's probably going to be a military coup, which, of course, was all the plan for, that he has completely won. And not only his plan, but apparently the nefarious UK government, again, in all these British spy shows, the real villain is always the government in the end. I'm not sure what that says. about everybody's lack of faith in their own government back in England. But yeah, it turns out that the UK has orchestrated this collapse of the Colombian government for the purposes of, we're not sure. We're not sure how that benefits the UK, but they are the ones who are behind all this. Oh, and of course, we know that there's someone even higher up than Roper. There's something more going on. That's what Olivia Colman's character,
Yes.
is saying on the phone, and she has a name. Somebody need to explore. And of course, the other shocking moment here at the very end, that she's out in France and has been murdered. So she, another main character here, dead. And
And the
also
poor
Angela
PI
Burr.
is dead.
Oh, I know. So that's the saddest one of all. Of course, Angela Burr, that's the character's name, by the way. But of course, Angela's death is shocking. And, obviously Olivia Colman, after winning Academy Award and being so busy doing all that work, really just popped up for some strategical scenes here in this season of the show. And you could figure maybe they could shoot a bunch of scenes for her in the next season as well to keep her in the show. But no, I guess they got rid of her character, and they didn't just write her off the show and have her, retire happily somewhere. They kill her off, which is a shocking turn of events, of course, just to speak to the fact that this is so far beyond where she's at. And maybe also explains the fact that she had a reason to comply with the threat and, identify Roper's body initially, because we were like, that's such a betrayal when that first happened. But apparently, she was afraid that she would be killed, and appears to be the guardian for her granddaughter here as well. And they follow through on that threat.
Although, given everything that has unfolded, she didn't really take any steps to protect herself that we saw.
Yeah, I don't know how her just being, they knew where she was, obviously. I thought at first because she was in such a remote location that no one knew where she was. But when she meets with the other Myra, that Myra says, I can't wait to come visit you in France at some point. So they know, she's basically winking to say that I know where you are. And yeah, they indeed knew exactly where she was. So, but just to go through some of the machinations of the plot in this particular episode. So we kicked off where at the beginning, everything seems to be going exactly the way that Pine had set up. And then, like you mentioned, the mistake he makes is to try to, quote unquote, rescue Roxana. Roper's watching somehow. I guess he placed the camera there, or he hacked into the camera and sees that, they think it's the blue car. But Teddy, of course, has reached out to Pine in the meantime, gave him a heads up. Right. Just in time, just as he's stepping out of the car, actually. And he says there's this other car. Luckily, no one was sitting in the car when they.
I know. I was thinking he must have seen it was empty, right?
I hope so. There's a couple of dogs in the back seat. Well, the dogs would be the least of it. They have a family there having grabbing a sandwich in between before they got out of the car. God forbid. More innocent collateral damage there. And they say shoot up the car. He's not in there. And now Roper knows, oh, someone leaked. He questions Roxana. You gave him a heads up. She's like, no, I did not. And basically convinces him that she has been she's dead inside now. I am fully dead inside now. Don't worry about me. And she just assumed
the accusation that she fell in love with him, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't buy that either, where of course I fell in love with him. I'm like, really? I never felt it there between the two of them. Again, I think this is a problem with what the show is trying to do with these characters. I'm going to keep harping on this, even though I like the show overall. But this was such a flaw because I didn't buy that. And you have to, I think if you're trying to excuse some of the behavior for this love that happened between these characters, the show never convinced me of it.
Yeah, I think I disagreed with you in that I do think the two characters have chemistry together. But even before, when I was talking about being driven by sexual desire, but not really by love, because that seems something that this particular situation, it would be very hard to develop a love for somebody, although maybe that's what we're supposed to think happened between him and Teddy. I don't know. I guess love can be complicated, and in a stressful situation, maybe everything moves at an accelerated pace. But either way, it's not believable between him and Roxana, for sure, between Pine and Roxana. But what do you think about the fact that Roper believed Roxana here?
Yeah, I think that we've seen across the show, especially in season one, that everyone's terrified of having to lie in front of Roper, that Roper can see through anybody, which I thought was, and again, something that's nearly preposterous in one of these shows. But the gravitas that Hugh Laurie brings to the character, you really do feel like, I remember in season one, when Elizabeth Debicki has to lie to him,
Oh my
like
God.
my heart was in my throat
So
because I'm like,
stressful.
he's going to see right through her, right? So it's very convincing in that way. So I think he is like this human lie detector, and he sees that she's just broken. And honestly, she probably is like, I'm going to die right now and I don't care. And
Hmm.
just seeing that, he probably is like, well, she's not lying to me now.
Hmm.
So then who else could it be? And I like that whole conversation he says where he is shedding another skin,
Yeah.
which is funny because he talks about him shedding another skin. Like now he's hardened to be able to kill his own son, where he was thinking about doing it anyway. So I'm not sure he's turned that much in this moment, but it is still a good bit of acting as usual with him anyway. And he lets her go, surprisingly, actually. And he knows that Teddy's the one who betrayed him, but he still has a test, which I think is clever as well. Yeah, and this, of course, sets up this whole ending. Also, how surprised were you that part of Pine's plan was to be, arrested and interrogated and trying to? This is very stressful. I have to say that this episode in general worked on me in making me more stressed out than
Yeah.
most of the episodes in this, because I just think about the fact that, wow, part of your plan is to go into the viper's nest basically and make yourself the bait in this whole thing. I'm like, wow, that's hardcore. This guy's really committed to the bit.
Yeah. It's bananas. He got really hurt.
Although the beating up scenes were not that convincing, they preserved his face. I think this guy would have been beaten to a pulp.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is how do you know that your body can withstand that or that
Right.
somebody's not going to take it too far? It seems like a very high stakes scam.
I think with Teddy, part of it is Teddy's doing some of the beating, which of course probably
Yeah,
means that he
I
can
know.
fake it a little bit. But yeah,
Mhm.
he obviously got hit by and kicked in the face a few times. And yeah, like you said, that was very stressful for me because I'm like, wow, this is a pretty, risky plot to say the least.
Yeah.
But of course, Roper's ahead of them. I was very happy, I have to say, when the two planes, I knew that the second plane was going to happen. I'm like, oh, Roper's ahead of them now. This is not going to end right now. But they really sold it. Even as a TV episode, they really sold that aspect. I was so confident that Roper was ahead of them. But then they made you wait so long for that plane to
That
actually arrive.
plane, yes.
And the guns are out and everybody's angry at Roper. And I'm like, wow, are they going to take it? Like, I really started to think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Roper is not ahead of them and maybe he's going to die right now.
But to me, that was part of the suspension of disbelief that you have
Sure.
to have because I don't think they would have let him survive. They seemed very convinced. So why wait? And then also, I don't think Roper would have let Pine survive.
Right. Yeah.
So
That when you think about it, if you break it down scene to scene, seems crazy where Roper says, oh, they're late. Of course, he did think the plane was going to get there on time. But given the plane has not arrived on time and everybody has turned against Roper, and Roper's like, oh, you're good, which, okay, let's take that face value that he's
yeah.
surprised that he had been so convinced that he didn't just get Teddy on board, he had everybody on board and
Mhm.
had already turned them. And he's like, wow, you are good at this. But then, given that everybody's got their guns trained on you, that he's basically putting his head in, against the barrel practically of Teddy's gun, like, shoot me in the head right now. If Teddy had lost his
Yeah.
cool or whatever at that moment, he'd be
Yeah.
dead. And then the weapon would arrive.
Right. Oops.
Oh, I guess we shouldn't have shot him in the head. But hey, we got the weapon anyway, so I guess
Exactly.
But yeah, it seems like a bad play on his part. But it did work for dramatically because you're thinking like, what's going to happen? But I have to say, I was so happy. I'm like, oh my god, the other plane is going to drop the package and kill poor Sally, another one of my favorite characters on the show. All the secondary characters, I was really very concerned that any of them would die. And we lost Basil, which I didn't want to see happen, obviously. We lost this PI who was getting so far above and beyond the call of duty.
Oh my God, yes.
And, he's like, get out of the car. I'll take the bullet for all you guys. I'm like, really? Wow. That's real commitment there.
Yeah.
Although we do at least understand that I'm glad that there's that one scene earlier in the episode where Pine actually says to him, I can't believe you've done all this for me. And he says, well, you're trying to save my country. So at least
Yeah.
he acknowledged that he understands the
Yeah.
scope of this, because that is something worth dying. Like if you could prevent a civil
Yeah.
war, then that's worth dying for. If you're just trying to help out this guy who's paying you $20 an hour, does
Right.
not
This
seem-
random guy who showed up in your office. Yeah.
I'll die for you just in case the check still clears.
Everybody falls in love with
Everybody is like, I love you too. It's this magic power. He is a superhero. He just makes everyone fall in love with him. That's the superpower. Yeah. And then we have the ending, right? Like it's the Empire Strikes Back where everything has gone wrong and our hero is collapsed in the forest, not dead.
Mhm.
Well, certainly not. And this 13-year-old keeps shuffling him through the forest. Our heroic PI is dead. Angela is dead. Myra gets off scot-free. And Roper is claiming his son from his boarding school. And this great cover, by the way, this folk singer from the 60s covering Masters of War by Bob Dylan, a great song there. I actually listened to it after the show ended because I'm like, oh man, I haven't heard that. So I had to track it down. It's a really great cover of Masters of War. And of course,
I like
thematically,
that. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll just say thematically, of course, that song itself, I know there's that the Masters of War, there's people who are orchestrating these wars and we're just the pawns on the board. What were you saying?
I liked that scene, how it was done with us hearing over the radio about what was happening in Colombia and then him switching the station. I thought that was nicely done.
It would be ironic if he switched the station and wanted to listen to Masters of War. He didn't get the critique in that song at all. And yeah, it's the dad, I should say the son is happy to see him and presumably will be a bigger part of next season. Another toxic father-son relationship, which has been all over the show from the very beginning.
Who were you most sad to see go? Martin, the PI?
I think Martin was because I just felt like he was so
committed.
so committed
Yeah.
and so outside of, beyond his depth. Like at least Basil and Sally like knew what they were in for.
Angela, Sally's still alive.
Oh, no, I meant like as far as, yes.
signing
correct.
up for it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I just meant like people who were potentially in the crosshairs.
Gotcha.
Angela, absolutely. Angela knew exactly what she was in for to a large extent. If she had not cooperated, even though her neck was on the line, she made the same devil's bargain that Pine made, but even more selfishly, where she was just thinking about her own situation, her own circumstance, and worried about what might happen to her granddaughter. And then think about how things worked out for her. Not only did this whole thing spun out of control, she thought she could somehow contain it in some way. And she's like, oh, but you don't understand. I'm the only one who's there to watch my granddaughter. Well, guess what? You're dead now anyway. And your circumstance is the same. Even if you were afraid of dying in the events that kicked off this season of the show, you're in the same situation. And Pine won. So she obviously made a terrible choice there, especially considering her own outcome. And we see Pine do it as well. We saw Pine trying to rescue Roxana instead of just cutting his losses, making the hard choice. And that's what he gets too. So, and Columbia has to face the price. They pay the price for all of this. Anything else that we want to touch on here?
Trying to think about it. I think, this was just a really fun, action-packed episode. It kept me guessing more than once and really all around very entertaining, although somewhat unbelievable at times. But hey, for a 6-episode arc, I think this was pretty fun, pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed this and I would recommend it if anyone's been on the fence. I initially wondered if they'd be able to pull off what they did with season 1. I don't think they did. It's a very different type of show and feels long for 6 episodes compared to the first show that changed locales. It had these 2 different chapters in Pine's life where we first see it almost split in half that first season where you see Pine, he's actually the night manager. He works at this hotel. He discovers Roper. Roper becomes a bigger character in season 2. And then in season 2, it's almost like a clean cut where he's suddenly in this very snowy locale and he's working at this hotel. And we're like, why is he here? Is he just running away from his past? Only for Roper to show up and we're like, aha, this is all part of the setup. So it was very clever the way that's set up. And of course, based on the book, here it felt a little long because it's all in one locale and you have to create some drama and bring characters in the middle of the show to juice things up again. But all of it is to say that I thought it really ended up very strongly at the end. And there's a lot of open questions here, obviously. We assume that in the season 3, Roper's going to have to fail like a final comeuppance. I assume Pine is going to have to finally, instead of trying to rescue everybody repeatedly, he's been motivated by rescuing one person after another. And he's going to have to make some hard choices about who he can and cannot save, and is going to probably have to kill himself. Like if he had just shot Roper in the head, this would all be over. And he has refused to do that so far. Maybe he has to make the ugly moral decision, and maybe that's what the show is trying to say. But you think about, how is he going to continue on? You have to assume, given the fact that Basil, and I'm sure all his keystrokes and his devices have been captured at this point, that the $300 million that he's been using to fund himself is gone. You know, the MI6 and other organizations around the world are probably looking for him. They know what his fake IDs are going to be. This is Pine specifically. Pine has lost most of his team except for Sally, and it's just going to be Pine and Sally somehow trying to take down Roper. And they don't even know who they can reach out to within MI6 who's not part of this conspiracy, or even people who they can trust within MI6, that their computers or their phones could easily be tapped and they could be surveilled. So it seems like they are very much on the short end of the stick here. And all that is to, of course, Pine is going to have to rebuild himself from almost nothing in season 3 and probably take down Roper himself. And of course, Roxana, with Roxana in the mix too.
Well, what do you think is going to happen with Danny? Do you think he is going to be a supporter of Roper, or has he built up a lifetime of resentment?
I hadn't actually thought about this, but I'm thinking, given the structure of the show and just our conversation right now, I have to assume that Danny is going to be a much bigger part of the next season. This is a somewhat recognizable actor now, the original actor, but has done a lot of other work in the meantime. So they'll probably bring him on as a more major part of the story. And I think he's going to be very important, basically, to the next season. And it's going to be a battle for his soul in the same way that we had Roper specifically say that he was trying to win over Pine, and even told him in this episode that that was a legitimate offer I made to you. I wanted us to build something together. That I think that the son, like you mentioned, he's going to like having the dad around, this absentee dad who has been hiding in so many ways, and now back in the picture again. But then he's going to probably start seeing the toxic side of the father over time. And then he's going to have to decide where his loyalties lie. And, there's going to be questions of morality in that as well. And I think that's probably going to be the crux of the next season, I would guess. The son is going to be very important to anything that happens in the show there. I don't know how Pine's back into the picture, because he's going to come back to England. And, ironically, he's going to be I should say Roper is going to be protected, and Pine is going to be the one that the government may very well be after that next set of episodes. So very curious to see how they even work that out from a plotting perspective. I hope he transferred some of that hundreds of millions of dollars when he had access to that account into a secondary account, that he just bought some crypto with it. And he has a crypto wallet somewhere that he can cash in. Any, what big questions do you have for the next season, if any?
Oh, interesting. I think my biggest question is about the Danny character, because I think there's a lot of potential there, even though he's still a kid, right? He's in high school.
Yeah.
Maybe some time will have elapsed between now and the next season of The Night Manager. So I'm curious to see how they develop that character and what side he's going to be on. I think that's my biggest question. I'm sorry to see Olivia Colman go.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, she would be a potential character in season 3 as well, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. And Teddy too. I thought the performer was good.
But if they were just going to continue to live in this gray area of homoeroticism, it's better off he's gone.
Yes, I agree. I completely agree. Just awkwardly, Pine being like, "Oh, he's coming over again."
caressing each other's faces every
Exactly.
now and then.
He's just always petting me constantly. It's so uncomfortable now that I'm in a new
Yeah,
relationship.
standing a little too close to each other.
Exactly. The worst is when I start dancing with my girlfriend and he always wants to dance with us. It's just really awkward. Anyway,
either
yes.
commit to it or don't. I have
Exactly.
no problem with them committing to it, but this gray area was really strange.
Agreed completely. Okay, one more question for you. Did you by chance watch If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You?
I didn't because my weekend got away from me, but it absolutely is a must watch for me. So perhaps next weekend.
While I was watching Industry last night, multiple times during the commercial break, because I have ads now on my HBO version, that they showed ads for this film. And I was shocked that they make it look like such a zany movie.
No way, really?
I'm like, wow, that is not my memory of this film at all. But yeah, check it out and maybe we'll discuss it in the near future.
I absolutely will.
Yeah, we'll actually find something to discuss. Oh, do you have Super Bowl plans?
I don't have Super Bowl plans. Not to get into the weeds of my family life, but we do a lot of soccer generally, and the weather this season has put a lot up in the air about when soccer will be played and where we will be playing soccer. So my weekend just revolves around that. And because of the terrible weather, everything is a question mark. We're waiting to see, will we play today? Will we not? So we don't make weekend plans. We just wait to see what the soccer team tells us we're doing.
There you go.
What about you? Are you going to a neighborhood party of some sort?
I think we're going to be hosting a party here, actually.
Fun.
We just cut the cable. I just cut my cable and I now just do streaming. And we have watched most of the playoffs on the streaming apps, but I do not have Peacock and I need Peacock to watch the Super Bowl. So I will probably activate my Peacock account and Sona. I'll share it with you because there might be some stuff to watch there. Primarily, what I think you might want to watch. This is the other reason I'm activating a Peacock account. I want to watch the Olympics. So I'm probably going to activate it for at least a month.
You know, we joke around about how there are so many streaming services and who knows where anything is anymore. But I will say we have a lot of streaming services. But the one that seems to come up regularly in our household of like, dang it, it's on Peacock. Like that seems to be the one that there are things we want to watch that we don't have access to. It always seems to be Peacock. Having said that, we do have Hulu, Disney Plus, Netflix, Prime Video. So there aren't that many streaming services left where we could be looking for stuff. But of the ones that are out there, Peacock seems to have the most interesting content.
Yeah. The Peacock has the one thing that I don't think is necessary for Peacock. Now I'm telling people not to get it. I'd say do activate it for the Olympics. I like seeing the stuff that isn't on the primetime coverage. So, of course, we could just put an antenna up and watch the network coverage. But I really like the Olympics, seeing all the additional coverage. I'm a big fan of watching all the Olympic stuff. And I love having something to watch with my daughter that, that the whole family can watch in general.
That's always a win.
Yes.
You know what we've been watching for that? It's very different than the Olympics, but somehow my son discovered the sitcom The Middle.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's really solid for family viewing.
There are so many of those, that whole era of sitcoms that I didn't watch, but maybe that's something to dig into. Oh, but speaking of Peacock, Scrubs is coming back. And did you ever watch The Burbs? Did you ever see the Tom Hanks film, The Burbs?
A long time ago. Yeah.
There is a new adaptation of it starring Keke Palmer, which is coming on as a binge this upcoming weekend, the same weekend of the Super Bowl and the Winter Olympics premiere. So I haven't seen any early reviews on this because, and maybe the fact they're dumping it in the middle of the Winter Olympics, maybe it's something to get more people to activate the Peacock subscriptions, or maybe they're just dumping it. I'm not sure. But I am a big fan of Keke Palmer. She's a lot of fun. So I am going to sample it at least, and especially if I'm going to activate this anyway for. Oh, but what was that show that you wanted to watch? I'll share our login with you, and you could watch All Her Fault. I think that's the one.
Yeah, the one with Sarah Snook.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that has a crazy twist too, so you can watch that show and.
I love a twist.
Appreciate that. All right, Sona. So we will find something else to talk about next week. There's not any big premieres, obviously, during the Winter Olympics. So, but we'll find something to discuss. We could try Hijack again. A social media reaction to this, which I'm 2 episodes behind on it, but the reaction has been pretty meh on it. So maybe we opt out of that show. But if we have nothing else to talk about, maybe we catch up on it and discuss the Olympics and a little Hijack conversation later this week.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks again. Oh, and check out If I Had Legs. That's another thing we can talk about.
Yes, I definitely will.
All right. Good. Thank you for the conversation. And I'll talk to you.
Thank you. Talk to you later.